Four empires, four different eras, four cultures that never met, yet all collapsed in almost the exact same way. Rome didn't fall overnight. Spain didn't crumble because of one bad king. And Britain didn't lose its empire because of one war. They all followed a pattern, a slow rise, a sudden overshoot, a period of denial, and then the collapse everyone swears could never happen here. And here's the part people don't like hearing. Some historians believe the United States is now following that same curve, almost step by step. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Beat. This is the empire collapse pattern. Rome, Spain, Britain, and maybe the USA. Every empire begins with discipline. Not glory, not wealth, discipline. Rome didn't start with marble statues. It began with farmers, hard, stubborn men, who feared debt more than death. Work was sacred. Waste was shameful. And this mindset built the most disciplined republic the world had ever seen. Spain rose the same way, not with gold, but with trade. Before the treasure fleets, Spain was a nation of shipbuilders, craftsmen, and merchants, competing fiercely across the Mediterranean. Britain's rise was different, but the pattern was the same. An island of tinkers and engineers, textile workers, miners, inventors, who built factories that outproduced entire continents. And after World War II, the United States became the final great builder, a nation where families believed tomorrow would be better than today, where factories roared day and night, and where a single paycheck could build a future. Four empires, four beginnings, different cultures, identical pattern, high productivity, low inequality, a strong currency, a population working harder than its rulers. Every empire rises when the bottom is strong, and every fall begins when the top forgets how the bottom built it. Every empire reaches a moment when wealth becomes so abundant, people start to believe it will never run out. That moment, the peak, is also where the decline begins. Rome hit its peak when expansion brought in more tax money than the empire could even spend. Cheap grain from conquered Egypt, slaves flooding the markets, gold caravans arriving weekly. The Roman people believed prosperity was permanent. Spain experienced the same illusion. Silver from the New World poured into Seville so fast that ships couldn't unload fast enough. For a generation, Spain thought the Silver River would last forever. Britain reached its peak in the early industrial era. Factories roaring, railroads stretching across continents, steamships carrying British goods to every port on Earth. London became the financial heart of the world, and believed it always would be. And the United States, post-WW2 America, produced half of the world's goods, held 2/3 of the world's gold, and owned the most powerful currency in human history. It felt invincible. But here's the pattern. When money feels unlimited, spending becomes unlimited. And that's where every empire begins to wobble. The overshoot is always silent at first. Rome expanded faster than it could govern. Spain spent faster than it could earn. Britain protected more land than it could afford. And America, for the first time, began believing that debt was the same as wealth. The peak always feels like victory, but historically it's the final breath before the long exhale. Every empire believes its prosperity is permanent. That's the illusion that ends them. Rome thought its tax system could fund infinite expansion. Spain believed silver would never stop flowing. Britain believed the sun would never set on its empire, and the United States believed its technology, economy, and dollar were untouchable. But decay doesn't begin with collapse, it begins with comfort. Rome's citizens grew dependent on government grain, free entertainment, and expanding welfare. The cost of armies, borders, and bureaucracy ballooned until the empire was spending more than it produced. Spain drowned itself in New World silver. Instead of building industries, it bought them. Easy money replaced innovation until prices exploded and the empire couldn't compete. Britain stretched itself thin across the planet, policing oceans, colonies, and global trade routes. A powerful empire, yes, but one operating on debt and denial. And today, the modern world sees its own reflection. Trillion-dollar budgets, debt rising faster than production, a shrinking middle class, a political system tearing itself apart, a belief that prosperity is guaranteed simply because it has always been there. But history shows the same warning every time. When citizens lose trust, the currency follows. And once the currency weakens, the empire is already halfway gone. Every empire survives on one invisible resource: trust. Not gold, not armies, not kings. Trust. When citizens believe their leaders, their currency holds value. When they believe their economy will grow, people invest. When they believe their society is stable, they stay loyal. But when trust breaks, everything collapses at once. In the late Roman Empire, people stopped trusting the government's promises, not because of grain or taxes, but because the empire began breaking its own rules. Laws shifted, justice became political, and soon loyalty became optional. In imperial China, dynasties didn't fall from foreign armies first. They fell when farmers stopped believing the state could protect them. When corruption spread and officials sold justice to the highest bidder, the mandate of heaven wasn't lost. It simply faded. In the British Empire, the collapse began quietly, not in the colonies, but in the financial heart of London. Banks weakened, public faith cracked, and once the world stopped seeing the British pound as unshakable, the empire's global power shrank almost overnight. And today, the modern world stands on the same knife's edge, not because of armies, not because of a crisis, but because trust, the foundation of every currency, every institution, every empire, is wearing thin. When trust collapses, an empire doesn't fall in decades. It falls in a single moment, the moment people stop believing. Empires never fall simply because they grow weak. They fall when something hits them, exactly when they're least able to withstand it. Rome didn't collapse just because of corruption. It collapsed when migrating Germanic tribes pushed against borders stretched thinner than paper. One bad harvest, one lost battle, one city sacked, and suddenly the illusion of eternal Rome shattered. Britain didn't lose its empire slowly and peacefully. It was drained by 2 world wars, surrounded by rising powers, and forced to choose between feeding its people or keeping its colonies. Spain wasn't defeated at home. It was overtaken by nations that industrialized faster, built stronger navies, and outcompeted it economically while Spain was still spending money it hadn't earned. And every empire reaches that moment, a moment when the outside world no longer bends to its will, and the inside world no longer believes in its own strength. Some historians argue the United States is nearing its own convergence point. Rising global competition, political division, staggering debt, and a currency increasingly questioned by international markets. No empire dies from one blow. But every empire dies when all the blows land at once. History never repeats perfectly, but sometimes it echoes so loudly it's impossible to ignore. Rome, Spain, and Britain didn't collapse because they were weak. They collapsed because they slipped into patterns they couldn't see. Patterns we can clearly identify today. And now economists, historians, and analysts look at the modern United States and recognize familiar shadows. The first shadow is debt. Rome debased its silver. Britain drowned in war loans. Spain inflated its prices beyond control. And the United States now carries more debt than any nation in human history. For decades, the US dollar acted as the anchor of global trade. But anchors only hold as long as everyone believes in them. The moment belief weakens, the system begins to shake. Then there's political fragmentation. Rome split into rival factions. Britain fractured under the weight of global revolt. Spain tore itself apart with internal warfare. And the United States is experiencing levels of division not seen since the 1860s. The next warning sign is economic inequality. Rome's elites controlled the land. Britain's aristocrats controlled the industry. Spain's nobles hoarded the silver. Today, America's wealth sits increasingly at the very top, a pattern every collapsing empire shared. Infrastructure declines, birth rates fall, trust in institutions erodes, and global rivals rise, not because America is weak, but because empires always slow down before they realize it. So, is the United States next? No one can say with certainty. But history does teach one truth clearly. The moment a society assumes it cannot fall, that is when the decline, quietly, begins. Patterns don't predict destiny, but they do reveal the path a nation is walking. When people hear the word collapse, they imagine fire, riots, and a civilization wiped off the map. But history tells a different story. Rome didn't vanish, it transformed. Spain didn't disappear, it rebuilt itself. Britain didn't fall into ashes, it reinvented its economy and culture. Every collapse looks like an ending, but it's really a transition. After Rome fell, small kingdoms rose with new laws, new trade routes, and new political systems. When Spain lost its empire, it shifted toward science, art, and domestic reform. And when Britain stepped down from global dominance, it pivoted into finance, industry, and innovation. Because empires don't die, they shed their skin. Today, the United States faces real challenges: debt, division, demographic pressure, and global competition. But it also holds something past empires never had: instant communication, rapid reinvention, and an ability to innovate faster than decline can spread. Every transition in history begins with a moment of fear, a feeling that the world is slipping out of control. And yet, those same periods created the most powerful breakthroughs. Rome's collapse led to the birth of medieval Europe. Spain's collapse opened the door for scientific revolution. Britain's decline paved the way for modern global finance and technological dominance. And whatever comes next for America, whether it stays an empire or it becomes one of several major powers, or reshapes itself entirely, there will be space for new industries, new leaders, new ideas, and new ways of living. History doesn't end. It resets. And in every reset, someone learns the new rules first.